Cette
Can you
conférence va
see?
maintenant être enregistrée.
Okay, can you see my screen well? I think you do, but just to confirm, because once we had a bit of an issue, so just want to check. And it's a real, yeah. Okay, good. Let me know, please, Randa, if there is a problem. And it's a real pleasure to be part of this series of webinar. I've been had the pleasure to do some talks previously, and it's always nice to be part of these groups, and they're always very interesting interactions. So thank you, Randa, for organizing it, inviting me, and organizing such an interesting panel of people. It's great, and especially because today we're talking about the domestic and wildlife interface, which is really one of the topics I prefer. Well, I love all the topics I'm talking about, and I through experience, but as you mentioned, I've lived in Africa for more than 20 years. I'm still working there a lot, and the wildlife domestic interface is really what I work the most on, working with remote communities, living at the interface. And I'd like to talk today. I will present you some practical cases, really, from my experience and what we did to address them. So it's not so much theoretical, it's really based on case studies. The first case study is, well, no, I mean, just a bit of theories, yes. We, as you mentioned, it's the domestic wildlife interface is so important, but there is a tendency to focus on zoonotic diseases, and rightly so, because as you know, with the pandemic, the number of studies on One Health and the interface has really increased, and there's been more and more studies, and we know that potentially, there are up to 850,000 undiscovered viruses in mammals and birds with a zoonotic potential. But it doesn't mean we have to be so scared of wildlife. And I think that's the message we really want to pass today. Although, yes, there are viruses in bats and rodents and primates, and these are the sort of most adapted species to human-dominated landscapes, and especially bats and rodents. They're also the species with, they're also the orders, the mammal orders with the most species. So it's quite normal that we find a lot of viruses in there. But let's put the picture in a sort of global picture and look at the biomass distribution of land mammal on Earth. And the biomass of wildlife is now only 4% compared to 60% for the biomass of farmed animals and 36% for humans. So really, yes, there are a lot of viruses in wildlife, but we have to realize that a lot of viruses actually are coming from domestic animals, and this is where the problem lies. So I'd like to take you to the Gonarezu National Park in southern Zimbabwe. And this is a place which is really located on the southeast corner of Zimbabwe in a transfrontier conservation areas. So obviously by the name, you recognize that these national parks cover different conservation areas across different countries. And this is the continuity of the Kruger National Park in South Africa and also another national park, Limpopo National Park in Mozambique here. And we had an issue with the discovery of bovine tuberculosis in some buffalo in the southern section of the park in 2009. So we need to conduct some investigation and also address the problem, and that's what I'd like to present you today. It was known that there was bovine tuberculosis in the Kruger National Park since the 90s, and it's interesting to see the progression of the disease. Obviously, it was transmitted from cattle into buffalo, and then from buffalo it evolved through, it progressed through the park. And because the transfrontier conservation areas allow for transboundary movement of wildlife, then the disease progressed to southern Zimbabwe, and that's when we conducted some investigation. And at the same time, there were cases of rabies, in the park, in the Gonarezu National Park, human cases, and also cases in lion, in wild dogs, and in domestic dogs. So obviously there was quite a lot work to do, and the One Health approach was very well suited to that. So when you had such, dramatic human cases of rabies, there was a little girl who died, and there were other cases, but they really go unnoticed. So there was a decision to address this, and the first step was to undertake vaccination of domestic dogs. But I mean, as vets, we know vaccinating dogs is fairly simple, but in these areas, it's not simple because the logistics first of working in such remote and isolated areas where vet services are not there full stop. They're not present. So you have to bring down all the vet services, and there was a willingness from stakeholders there, tourism lodgers and people who had instigated community-based management areas in the area to do something, and that's why we were able to work together. So One Health is really about putting stakeholders together and having some key stakeholders, and in particular, I'd like to mention somebody called Clive Stockhill, who has an incredible knowledge of all the communities there, and who is accepted as an elder in this community, and that's why we're able to conduct all these programs there. And yes, you're working in remote communities and local communities who have got can be considered as indigenous communities. They've got their specific language, which is different from the national language. So there are a lot of barriers to just develop an intervention in this area. And mobilizing dogs owners was also very difficult. And then we realized simply we didn't know how many dogs there were. We didn't know, who owned dogs. The first vaccination campaign we did, there was 52% of uptake. We vaccinated about 1,000 dogs in 3 days. And the first person to come was sadly the father of that little girl who had died of rabies. And you can see here vaccinating dogs. We had to use some remote equipment because you can't manipulate these dogs. So they are, it's not easy to vaccinate dogs. And then we had to conduct an investigation really to understand the sociocultural context about, how do people understand disease? How do people, use dogs? What are the other challenges at the interface? Because if you want, as we know, rabies vaccination to be efficient has to cover about 70%, more than 70% of the dog's population. But the reality is that when you don't know, how many dogs and what do people use the dogs for, and how do people trust you really? And it boils down to trust. That's what really we realize. So conducting that investigation and working with people who have got all the knowledge about the area, we realized a lot of things, and there was a long history of marginalization of these people, Shangaan people, who used to be hunter-gatherers and still hunt, and they use dogs for hunting. But obviously hunting is not allowed anymore with the creation of the national park, although in some areas there are now community-based conservation areas, so now there is a bit of hunting which is allowed. But so there is a history of government not wanting these people to hunt with their dogs. So the first step was when actually the government, the vet services, moved in to vaccinate the dogs. The people thought, oh, well, actually they want us to stop hunting, And then we realized actually there was another story that had been circulating about, oh, people are coming to kill our dogs. Actually, vaccination is going to kill our dogs. And that we digging out, we realized there had been previously many years ago a story of a vaccination campaign. And what happened is that during this vaccination campaign, there had been also another outbreak, and then a lot of dogs died, which was not associated with it. And then people sort of got confused and thought actually, our dogs are being killed by vaccination. So you have really to dig out, the deep roots of people's understanding and behavior. And this is something that is really happening around a lot of conservation area, and that is, fairly similar around these places. So working on that, we stepped back and really developed, and the program evolved around 5 years of work. We developed awareness and education campaigns, in the village, working with local people who had influence, the wildlife committees, the headmaster at the school, the nurse at the health post, all the key people, all the key stakeholders who have an influence. We developed some education material which was translated in the local, in Shangaan language. And very important, the youngsters, the youth, which initially was kind of laughing, at all these teams coming to vaccinate dogs, because they're using the dogs, they hunt with the dogs, became little by little really interested in all these issues. And the fact also that there was the same vet team coming down to do the vaccination every year was very important, because that allowed to develop some trust. Sorry, I'm realizing there is no more light in my room. So that was really important, yes, to build trust. I think this is one of the fundamental of One Health, core value of One Health, establishing trust with communities. And through that, you need to mobilize the youth, the children. So we conducted also One Health education activities in the schools, mobilizing the school kids, celebrating, International One Health Day, and developing school quiz competition, drawing competition, and lots of activities. And here you can see, what to do if you're bitten by a dog with rabies. And all the kids in the end knew very well how to answer all these questions, which was really good. But that didn't, obviously, after we conducted evaluation to find out, how the uptake of the knowledge. But the most important thing was that, it was an ongoing activity, it was developed every year, and there was trust which had been built with the community and everybody. And also we conducted One Health education to various target groups. So there was obviously, the adults and women. It was very important to target women, but I had heard, in other talking to other conservationists or researchers, or from time to time, I hear these sort of comments about, it's very difficult to mobilize women. You organize a meeting and they don't pitch up. They are only 4 or 5 people, and quite often I say, well, have you actually asked the women when is the most convenient time for them to come? And also in these remote communities, in these remote villages, to go to a meeting point, it can take you 2, 3, 4 hours, because you've got households which are very disseminated in the bush or in the forest. So, organizing a meeting has to be done carefully, because actually, if you look, but that's another subject, and at all the sort of constraints on women and all the activities and responsibility, they just don't have time. 4 o'clock in the morning, they're up in the fields, and again, it's another subject. But so if you want to target women, and they have to be included, obviously, in all One Health interventions, because they play such a key role, you have to really be careful about when they are available, where you organize to have a meetings, who is going to conduct the awareness and education programs, so that also they feel confident and they develop trust. And that's what we did. So here, it was also, prevention. There was awareness about a lot of other waterborne disease and brucellosis and bovine tuberculosis, and obviously rabies, which were important disease. That was about brucellosis here, and the transmission through drinking raw milk. So, the domestic wildlife interface needs to be dealt with, managed with a true One Health approach. And that's what we're seeing here. That's something we presented at a conference in 2016. So well before the One Health approach became so, um, talked about. And really what we're seeing here is that you have to take zoonotic diseases in a broader context, not just saying, oh, we just need to target the disease. There is a global context, a general context in these areas, which is a context of, pressure on these conservation areas and poverty, malnutrition, food insecurity of local and indigenous communities through their marginalizations, through poor access to education, poor access to health services, increasing droughts, overuse of natural resources, human-wildlife conflict, which I'll talk about a bit later on. And all this leads to soil and crop productivity decreasing, poor access to water, decrease in wildlife habitat, and obviously an increased interface between domestic and wildlife. And that feeds a circle, a poverty cycle, and to deal with this context, you need to develop One Health interventions, but having a broad understanding of all the challenges so that, you just don't deal with the zoonotic diseases, which are a small aspect of it all, actually. And just another aspect, we dealt with the bovine tuberculosis, and assessed the prevalence of the disease in buffalo in the southern section of the park, and after in the northern section of the park. And we found actually in the northern section of the park, there was very little, there was no, the incidence was nil. And what was really interesting is that also we did some monitoring of bovine tuberculosis, some detection in cattle around. And there is a possibilities that cattle in the northern section of the park, being of the Nguni indigenous breed, might be a lot more resistant to disease than in the southern section, where it was mixed breed and probably less resistant. So that's also another consideration when you're looking at the interface. The indigenous breeds of cattle are a lot more resistant. But as going back to the framework that was presented before, you need to look at the broader context. So how to better manage the interface? And obviously water is a very important aspect of the interface, because that's where you get a mix of cattle. Here you can see this is the, oops, sorry. This is a little guardian who is taking the livestock to drink at the river, and the river is the interface, because you get on the other side, you've got the national park, and here this is the community side. So in the evening you get elephants, buffaloes, all the antelopes, the kudus, and all the species which are which, for example, can also carry bovine tuberculosis and be affected by that. So in order to reduce that interface, we helped to develop, to provide, separate water sources for cattle. And also we rehabilitated boreholes in the village, so that, women and girls whose main responsibility is to get water could access water more easily, and also not share all the water sources with everybody. And what we find was really interesting, because there was the impact on education. Boys' education turned out to be really interesting, because after we interviewed the youngsters in the village and the boy herders, and they said, well, now, we don't need to walk in the evening to take all our cattle to drink at the river, which could take us 4 or 5 hours. Now we take them to the trough. And obviously, we have time to come back home and study and do our lessons, which we couldn't do before. So before we were, very often had to leave school. Same thing with the little girls, who before had to go to the river to get water. And now they could just find water in the village, and that had obviously huge repercussion on their education and health as well. So One Health is about integrating all these aspects, and again, not looking at the bigger picture and what are the drivers of disease. And that's what I'm trying to remind you through this slide. Addressing the socioeconomic drivers to reduce risks at the interface. This is a study, and I'm showing results for South America, but it's such an illustration of the conditions in which indigenous people and local communities live around conservation areas. I remind you that indigenous people and local communities land overlap with 80% of the world's biodiversity. And here, these are indicators in terms of low birth weight, children mortality, and maternal mortality rate. And here is the benchmark in each country. And here, these are the rates in indigenous people. And you can see, for example, maternal mortality rates being so much higher in these communities, low birth weight, infant mortality rates, all these being a reflection of poor health, discrimination, poor nutrition, food insecurity. And all this is really going back to the rights of communities living around these areas, which have been often marginalized. And there is what we call a biocultural dislocation of these people who are the very custodians of wildlife and biodiversity. So another aspect that I'd like to mention, which is not very integrated into One Health yet, but working in these areas, I really think, this is highly relevant. And that's the management of human-wildlife conflict. And I'll just take an example of the management of human-lion conflict in Zimbabwe, which we work on. And that's obviously all the partners which are involved. And this is a very important aspect, because if you look at the threats of lion as a species in Africa today, well, you can see that the biggest threat is actually human-lion conflict, more important than trophy hunting or resource extraction. Bushmeat poaching is going to affect the lion population by decreasing prey species on which these apex predators are feeding. And what's important is that it's the most important threat to lion population. And, because people are going to do retaliatory killing of lion when there is, lion depredation on livestock. People are just going to go and try to find these lions which have killed their livestock. And if it's not that very lion that has eaten the livestock, it's going to be another lion. And usually what was found is that there is a certain amount of tolerance towards livestock depredation. But when people are attacked, and that is often the case, especially when you have poor access to water and kids have got to walk, for long distances to school or to get water, you can get accidents, and that's when people are really going to retaliate. So what we did in this area, and that's part of a much bigger program, which is part of, has got a lot of places in Africa. It's got places in Kenya where it's been developed, and it's called the Long Shields Lion Guardian Project. And it's based on the fact that, you really need to involve communities and train local monitors, which are called lion guardians. And these guys are going to be trained into, following lions, recording data about lions, following the movements, and provide early warning systems about lions, so that when there is, and most of these lions are now colored, so that when there is a lion coming near a village, through mobile phones, they're going to send text messages giving a warning signal, watch out, don't go out at night. There might be a lion coming to the area. And obviously there is a lot of education campaign going on about, these programs. And you can see here when the program started, there was a huge decrease in the number of lions that were killed through this training program. And another very interesting aspect of this program is the fact that, we also improve veterinary care for the cattle, because there was there was no health monitoring of this cattle before at all. So we just help to provide the cattle handling facilities and train local people to look after the cattle, look for signs. But usually they know very well when the cattle is in good form or not, in good shape or not. So it was just also basic vaccination and anti-parasitic treatment when needed, just general, veterinary care and management, which was important to local people because there was none before. And a very interesting aspect that was developed as part of this program, which is the use of mobile bomas. Before, people used to take the cattle to graze in the bush, and then taking them back in maybe some paddocks, bomas at night, which were just fenced with wooden fence. But then the idea was to develop a mobile boma and made of these plastic sheets. And the reason why is that when lions see this plastic sheet, they are scared. They don't want to go in it. If it is just a wooden fence, they're going to jump over it or go through it. But if it's plastic sheet, and that's a method that is used for capturing wildlife, then the wildlife sees it as a wall, so they won't go in. And by taking back the cattle in these bomas, fence bomas at night, the lions are not going in it to predate on these lions. But another aspect of it, which is really interesting, is that the bomas are then moved. They're sort of settled in for a week or two, and because they're fairly easy and simple to move around, then after a few weeks, they're moved, and the cattle are having the most incredible action because they're actually using their hooves, and the movements of the hooves on the ground is replicating. It's something that is called holistic grazing management. It's replicating the movement of wild herbivores on the land. And at the same time, with the cattle manure and urine that is fertilizing the land, well, that's what we found. If you plant crops in these bomas, once the bomas has been moved to another area, well, actually, the crop yield is much better. So there was a double action of, so a triple action of these bomas, reducing depredation and reducing depredation, allowing to move the cattle around to new areas, and at the same time you could plant crops where the bomas had been and have improved crop yield in these areas. So this is really One Health in action. It's amazing how just interventions like that can have benefits on people's health, animal health, wildlife health. That's what really One Health is about. And I would like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to present these cases. I think really the wildlife and domestic interface is something we need to talk more and more, and also all the positive interventions that can be done to harmonize the coexistence of people and wildlife, which is very often, you know, something that was done before in the past, people had some coexistence with wildlife, and now through the pressures, there is more conflict, but we need to go back to that state of coexistence. So thank you very much, and I leave the floor to other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Julie, for your nice presentation. And we can conclude that we should think more positively about wildlife, instead fighting the wildlife, instead putting the blame for any emerging infectious disease.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Yeah, and especially that the kind of the ruminant and the bowman, that was literally a brand new thing in my opinion. But thank you so much for this nice presentation as always. So any of the attendee has any question to Professor Julie, please, the floor is yours. And also we can share her email with you in case you would like to ask her any question. So please just raise your hand and unmute yourself and introduce yourself also to the others. Okay? Thank you. Is there any questions? Okay. Is there everybody is shy today? Come on, if there is any question to Professor Julie, please feel free.
Maybe I can comment.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I'm Joseph from Kenya.
Hello, Joseph, our team member. He's one of our team member. Please, the floor is yours, dear.
Yeah, thank you, Professor, for that nice presentation. It's really an interesting one. So mine will just be a reaction or a comment. Sometimes you find a disease like rabies. It's sometimes is an endemic disease in Africa, and the cost of intervention, especially at the animal interface, is really very low. Like it costs $1 to vaccinate dogs, but then you find most dog owners are reluctant to pay $1. But then the cost of treating someone who has been bitten by a suspected rabid dog will be like 60 to $90. So you find dog owners are oblivious of this danger. And then the question comes in, how do we make them understand the benefit of controlling rabies in dogs so that we can safeguard humans? Because people keep dogs, but they are actually reluctant to make these steps. So in your case, I realized that you train children to break the barrier between to clear the barrier, the suspicion. So I don't know, what is your thought towards how we can actually encourage more people to come out and protect the animals by vaccinating them? Your experience, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's a very good question. I think awareness and education is key, and I think having different strategies for different target groups is important. And I really think, you know, involving kids, the youth, as I said, you know, this young, I mean, the adolescents are really important to mobilize, because you need to involve them and they need to see some benefits. And the women, mothers, you see, because as we know, you know, kids are the primary targets, you know, the primary target in being bitten by rabid dogs. So I think, you know, it's having focused awareness campaigns, trying to really work with some smaller, to start with, you know, groups in some communities, and little by little, you know, because all these activities are ongoing, they will understand, they will spread out the word. So I think, you know, focused awareness and education campaigns with target groups, and then really working with them to convince them. And usually you'll find that women are very receptive. That's something we find, So try to find women's groups or women's association, or just, a point of entry in the communities where you can work with them and ask them, what is the perception as well, cost might be a perception, but quite often it's not the only obstacle to the vaccination. So understanding what people really think about the vaccination and rabies, their understanding of rabies is really important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Julie, for your answer, and thank you, Joseph. Joseph is one of our team members. Actually, also, yes, we totally agree with you, Professor Julie, because in some cultures they have different perception toward dogs. They don't agree to raise dogs for some, let's say, religious or some cultural um, perceptions in general, let's say, but at least working on kids, especially, it might be helpful in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So is there any questions to Professor Julie? Because as in the comments, we have received a lot of positive feedbacks. Feedback from they are telling you thank you, nice presentation. If you can share your presentation via email to the audience. So, um, okay, if there's any additional questions to Professor Julie, please, before we start with our next presenter. So our Malik, I guess, or Amino, I'm sorry, Amino, please, now it's your turn. Thank you so much.
Okay. Hello everyone. Good day, good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on the country that you are in. My name is Aminu, as Randa has said. Um, yeah. So we have a couple of presenters today. So moving on quickly, we are going to present our next presenter, who is Dr. Abdul Fattah Muhammad from Ethiopia. So, Professor, are you there, please? Maybe we can make him a
Yeah,
presenter so that he can. All right. So,
Yeah, Dr.
before
Muhammad
you
Abdel
start,
Fattah.
Professor, yeah. Oh, Doctor, Dr. Abdul Fattah is a doctor of veterinary medicine, and he holds a master's degree in One Health and in tropical infectious diseases. He is currently a lecturer and a researcher at Jigjiga University, that's in Ethiopia. He has more than 5 years of experience in research, advocacy, and community service in One Health and zoonotic disease prevention and control. His works involve in how integrated health approaches can improve service delivery and livelihood outcomes in the Ethiopian pastoral communities, more particularly the control of and prevention of zoonotic pathogens at the human-animal environment interface through the One Health approach. So I think, Doctor, if you're ready, the floor is all yours now. Thank you.
Yeah, I have made you the organizer, so you can share your screen, and if you can open your camera. Okay.
hey, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, we can hear you, and we can see your screen.
Hello?
The floor is yours, Dr. Abdel Fattah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Randa and the organizers of this important event. It's important webinar. I would also thank Professor Julia for the nice presentation and the wonderful job she has presented. So, directly going into the presentation, I would like to present on the importance of understanding the livestock wildlife interaction in the One Health approach. So I will be talking about this topic, especially the concept part, because so far a lot of works have been done on in the area of One Health, but still we need to have more communication and discussion on this topic. So my presentation will have this outline, and in the previous days, for like, let me say, 2000, the issue of wildlife health was not receiving much attention from the health sector, whether it is the human health or animal health. So and in those early days, the focus on the wildlife health was about if there is, for example, if there is a problem in the wildlife that causes a problem in livestock, or if there is problem in zoos and in wildlife aspects that have economic importance. So it was more about the it was an anthropocentric issue. But over the last few years, for the past 10 years, there has been dramatic change in the way animals are treated and produced. So the different subsectors of the livestock production, including the feed manufacturers, breeding companies, livestock keepers, have evolved and changed dramatically. And the demand for livestock-derived food has increased due to the increase of the human population. So this growing need to increase livestock production indicates that there will be an increasing interaction between wildlife and livestock, and this will be important in the next decades. And because of this, the impact of wildlife population will intensify. So I will discuss how this will happen. So the issue of livestock wildlife interface is not a standard concept, but it is rather one or an issue that varies tremendously across the different parts of the world, and that depends on the human, livestock, and wildlife densities and their environment, as well as wildlife species, environmental factors, and anthropogenic land use change. So the impacts of these interactions at the wildlife livestock interface can be positive or negative. So when we talk about livestock wildlife interaction, most people might look at the negative aspects of it, issues like zoonotic diseases and human-animal conflict and stuff like that. But it can be positive as well as negative, as described by the previous presenter, Professor Julia. So there are different ways in which livestock and wildlife can interact, and this interaction has, as I said, positive as well as negative impacts. So, for example, when we come to the positive aspects of or positive impacts of livestock on wildlife, for example, if the diseases in livestock are reduced, if there is good veterinary service and if there is good disease management, control and prevention systems in livestock, this will have a positive impact on wildlife because diseases that can be transmitted from livestock to the wildlife will be decreased. If disease prevalence in, for example, in wildlife, in wildlife,
Hello, Dr. Abdel Fattah. I guess your voice is breaking down. Hello.
disease spill over or diseases that come that 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 come from wildlife to life to be decreasing. And there can be scenarios or ways in which the livestock can have a negative impact on wildlife and vice versa. For example, if there is decreased resources, if there is scarcity of water and food, especially in the developing world where extensive livestock production system is used, then this will have a negative impact on the livestock population because there will be a competition to natural resources like water and pasture between the livestock and life. So the arrows in this diagram, the compartments are they show the relative difference in size of the influence and the overall
Dr. Abdel Fattah. Hello, doctor. Doctor,
life.
can you hear us? Dr. Abdel Fattah. Okay. Actually, your voice is breaking down, Dr. Abdel Fattah. So could you please? Yeah, because we can't hear you very well.
To be understood is what drives livestock wildlife interaction. Because to understand, interaction, we need to know the drivers, the factors that drive and affect these interactions. So we can classify these drivers into two groups. So sorry. Hello. You hear me?
I think your line is breaking, Doctor.
So
Yes, yeah,
we
actually,
can
we couldn't
divide
hear
these
any.
drivers into two parts.
Dr. Abdul Fattah.
We can classify the drivers into global and local drivers of livestock-wildlife interaction. So issues like human population growth, demand for or increased demand for food production, the need for more space, anthropogenic land use changes, as well as other issues classified as global drivers. So, for example, if human population growth increases, we expect to increase from 7.7 to 9% in 2050. This will different demand of food production, especially food of animal origin. And
This conference will now be recorded.
The AMR, that is antimicrobial resistance, and then the land use change, food safety and security, and of course zoonotic diseases. So it's a very broad term, and a number of people are still confused about what is the real concept of One Health, because all of us from different fields and different streams, we see One Health and define it in our own way. Like Dr. Julie was talking about the perspective of seeing anything. So in the same way, we people have our own perspectives about One Health. But yes, of course, I cannot deny that it is mostly human centric, though the definition tells us that it has to take care of the human health, then animal health, wild animal health, plant health, all these things. But because we are the supreme creatures, so unfortunately, we focus more on the human species. So when I say that One Health approach to food safety, it's more about the food which we consume, the safety of that food. But otherwise, if I want to define this in my own words, then I would like to talk about the food safety of the food which the animals are consuming and the food which the human are consuming, both kind of food, like the food which we are getting from the animals, the animal products. But otherwise, if we talk about the herbivores or the carnivores, then though they also have that they should also have a safe food source to eat, because then only we'll get to attain that One Health concept and approach, and then only will be that we talk about the sustainable development goals, and one of that is about health and well-being of all. So then only we'll be able to attain that. Just a second, I just minimize this. Yes, so One Health for food safety. So whenever we talk about anything, I think first we should know that what is that concept we are talking about and why we are talking about it. Like what is the importance or the significance, or what is the scope of that thing, the topic which we are talking about, and what all it covers, and what are the drivers, what all factors affect that, and how we can mitigate that or we can contain that. So first of all, we need to actually know that what is food safety. So if we want to define food safety, it's not only one step, it has a number of steps, and it starts right from where the food originates till we get it in our plate. So it's from farm to fork. So all the steps included preparation, handling, food meant to prevent like transport, and then packaging, and then shipping to different areas of the world, and then consuming actually. So all these processes, all the steps while handling the food, all these are covered under food safety and food hygiene also. And actually, it's a very scientific term. It's not that we don't have any logic for talking about this. It has its own scientific justifications and logic. That is why we are talking about it. And we have to describe a safe process, practices to how to right from the where it is grown, then harvested, transport, handle, prepare, package, all these things. Because when we grow the food, right from there, if we are using pesticides and insecticides, you know very well that these chemicals, they undergo bioamplification. Lot of crops are harmful for us to eat just because of use of these pesticides and insecticides in those crops. Or like if the food animals, if we are consuming milk and that cattle has been given the injections of oxytocin, for example, then the milk is not that safe because the residues of that oxytocin will be there in the milk, and that oxytocin can cause abortions in females, pregnant females. So all these things are interconnected. When we talk about uh, human, animal, wildlife, environment, all this interface, then this means that we want to address whatever interdependence or whatever impact they have on each other. And the impact, like just before me, the speaker who was talking, he was talking about the negative and positive interactions. So people usually say human wildlife conflict, but I would say that it's not human wildlife conflict. It's better to call it human wildlife interaction. Then we can divide it into negative or positive interactions. So if the population of humans and animals both is increasing, they have the common resources, they compete for the common resources, then what happens, that interaction, there is a close interaction, there's more encounters. Otherwise it's not very common to have an encounter with a wild animal. But nowadays, because the people who were living on the fringes of the protected areas, national parks or tiger reserves, now there is no gap between the protected area and the residential area of the people. So they are trying and they are encroaching into the forest land. That is why all this is happening. They have their livestock, they send their livestock to graze in the forest, in the even in the tiger reserves. So all these close interactions lead into conflicts because they are competing for the common resources. That is why it's very important that we have to address all the entities if we really want to address any problem, either disease or food safety or anything. Then the first thing is that we have to understand the interdependence and the linkaging between all these entities, that what is the impact of one onto another. Food safety and food hygiene, both are equally important. Though uh, most of the people, they'll think that it's these two words are same and we can interchangeably use them, but a little difference is there in them. That like if we talk about the food safety, we talk about the food hygiene, we talk about food quality. So though all these three things, they are somehow making the food safe for us to consume, but they have a little different meanings and have their own impact. Like if we talk about the quality, then it covers something else. For example, if I am giving an example from the agriculture field, we have seeds, and those are, they have different certifications, they have different standard, they have different quality standards, and that is why on that basis they are given different categories, and accordingly the price is fixed. So quality, safety and hygiene, all these things have to be focused upon. This is food safety versus food quality. What I was saying, that food safety refers to all those hazards, whether chronic or acute, that may make food harmful for the health of the consumer. And quality, it includes all other attributes that influence a product's value to the consumer. Like we do the veterinarians, one job of the veterinarians is meat inspection. Until unless the veterinarian puts a stamp in, inspects the meat and puts the his or her stamp that this meat is fit for eating, then only that meat can be consumed. Otherwise If it's not fit, if the quality is not good, then it is just discarded. There are a lot of factors which are influencing the food safety. So if we want to talk about food safety and then we want to talk about food safety in one health perspective, so what we need to know, first step always is, when you identify the problem, then you have to define the problem, then you have to find out the causes of the problem. What are the drivers? What are the factors which are leading to the problems? Then prioritize them, and accordingly, according to the priority, we address them. So factors which influence the food safety are food contamination. Foodborne diseases result from the contaminated food, and that contamination can be in any form, like bacteria, virus, parasites, any kind of chemical agents, any kind of toxins. Like a lot of fungus also grow in feed a number of times, like for example aflatoxin or aspergillosis. All these things are caused by fungus. So any kind of contamination in the food, that can lead to foodborne diseases, so it has to be taken care of. Then demographics is another important factor, because people who are at higher risk, they become seriously ill, like different age, different sex, different health status, and different spatial distribution. All these things are also responsible for how the body is reacting, what kind of immuno status you have, status of immunity, and accordingly that person would be vulnerable for the any kind of, not only foodborne disease, any kind of disease. So like for example, if someone is suffering from immunodeficiency syndrome like AIDS, cancer, or any disease, pre-existing disease that weaken their immune system, then they are much more vulnerable for the foodborne illnesses. Consumers' lifestyles and demands. This is also, it also makes a difference, because you know what now is happening. Now we are very fast. We are moving very fast nowadays. We don't have time for each other, not even for the family. So earlier, what used to happen, that the meals were cooked in the home, but most of the time now what we prefer, because the all the family members are working, husband, wife, everyone is working. So now what we prefer is that we get the prepared food, and in that situation we get the food from either from the restaurants, we order from outside, or we use canned food which is already prepared food. So this means if we are cooking the food in our own kitchen, there are less number of steps. We are using the fresh vegetables. We are procuring the meat or vegetables from the market ourselves. We know what kind of ingredient we are getting. We can have a control on hygiene. Then we treat and then cook. But when we are eating the prepared food, we don't have any kind of control. A lot of people might have touched that in different processes, I don't know, like we don't know really how it was cooked, the ingredients were proper or not, they were really fit for eating or not, either they were contaminated, all these things, or maybe it is an old food and it is reheated. So all these things happen when we are using the prepared food. So these lead to foodborne diseases. Food production and economics, these scenarios are also changing with time. In the past, the outbreaks of foodborne illness were relatively small and local, and they could be identified, they could be tracked easily, because we were using the local produced food. Now what is happening is that the food is now grown on large scale, distributed on a wider scale, and that is why it is somewhere in the centralized place, it's being produced on a mass in a very large quantity, and it's being shipped to different parts of the world. So that is why if a single mistake happens in any process, during any step of the food handling, processing, packaging, transporting anything. So this one mistake will be spread to all those places where this food has been shipped. And this is very important, that they're new and evolving pathogens. So this is a very important thing, and this is having a very large impact on the foodborne diseases, because we we identified one kind of pathogen, and now we developed the protocol for how to get rid of it, how to treat that, either maybe bacteria, virus, fungus, anything. But in the meanwhile, if we are talking about the virus, it gets mutated, new strain comes, any such new pathogen come, which we don't know, we have never seen that pathogen, we don't know what is the mode of action, on which system it will work, all these kind of things. It takes time to identify the new pathogen and then to develop a protocol for treating that pathogen. So all these new and novel and evolving pathogens are also a very large threat. Now, after we know the factors about what factors are important for food safety, now let's connect it with the One Health. How One Health approach can address those factors and we can get rid of them. This is just a depiction of what the term which I used earlier, farm to fork. This is depicting all those processes, how it is being done, like how the animal production, it is being amplified, bioamplification is happening, and human animal zoonotic infections are resulting due to that. Or when we are harvesting or slaughtering the product, due to handling, contamination can happen, or in the process of storage or preparation at home or wherever, at this stage also amplification of the pathogen can happen. Then the food reaches to the consumer or the patient. The patient word is used because the consumer, if the consumer is not getting safe food, then of course he or she will be suffering from a foodborne illness, irrespective of whether that food product is a vegetable product or the animal product. That food is not safe and is leading to foodborne illness. And when we talk about One Health approach for food safety, it can be a promise of harnessing and integrating enterprise and resources from across the spectrum of multiple health domains, including human, veterinary, plant pathology, and these communicate those with those of the wildlife, aquatic health, ecology, communities, everything. When we say One Health, we say multisectoral, we say transdisciplinary, we say collaborative, we talk about coordination. So just because in the whole process of food from farm to the fork, a lot of animals, plants, chemicals, environment factors, all these things are involved. And then if we are facing any problem, this means that all these different entities play different role in this whole process, and we need to address each of them. We need to identify where is the origin, then we need to address. And one person or one professional cannot address all those factors, because it is from the, like if it's about the crops, then the agriculture person would be able to handle it. If it's some kind of plant pathogen, which is the vegetarians are eating the food and there is some foodborne illness due to vegetable or due to whatever crop they are having, so agriculture person would be able to treat that. Then if it's from the fruits, then horticulture. If it's from the animal source, because with the like increasing population, we need more quantity of food, we have more demand for the protein, and in that situation what is happening, that there is a lot of burden on the animals for uh, fulfilling this increased demand of the protein. So that food coming from the animals would be addressed by the veterinarians. So this means that human, veterinary, plant pathology, all these kind of professionals need to come together, and then only we can have a safe food. Now, how can we combat these zoonotic foodborne diseases? We have to decide different levels, because we are talking that we have to identify from where it is originating. What is the first point from where this problem started? So, and what we do, like we develop guidelines locally, nationally, but we have a binding that whatever guidelines are there at the international platform, we, all the countries, they have a binding to follow those guidelines. So we have to think locally or regionally, then nationally, and then internationally. This is not very current data. It's a bit like few years ago. It's just a statement to understand that the global population has now exceeded 7 billion people, and an estimated 30 billion food animals were produced to help feed this population and meet its growing demand for protein from animal sources. So it's not that only naturally the population is increasing. Because the food demand is increasing, we are breeding, we are having the breeding programs, we breed, and we are increasing the population of the animals, which can be a food source. And the result is global food system that is both a major agricultural and business accomplishment and an unparalleled challenge. Why challenge? Because it's creating major societal issues that to some extent threaten human, animal, and environmental health. When we overdo the things, when we need the resources which are more than a feasible point of production, then of course we compromise somewhere with the quality. So if the population explosion is there and we are going out of the way to fulfill this demand, this means that we are compromising somewhere. So this is also a very big challenge for us. So the different multiple professionals from different sectors, stakeholders have to be identified. All those stakeholders, not only people who are working with the government, the people who are working with the NGOs, even the community people, because here comes the perception. They also should, awareness and education is very important. Like Dr. Julie was talking about, unless the common people for whom we are doing this thing, they don't understand what is One Health, they don't know what is the significance of safe food, they don't know what is food safety, what is the significance of food safety, and from which sources these can come. So awareness and education is very important. They should know all these concepts, then only we'll be able to help them, and then only the public participation will be there. So all these kind of things, we need that. Even the research is also needed. Both things are important. The practical things which we do on ground in the field professionals, as well as when we identify the gaps, the research has to be done. R&D is also equally important. So we need the scientists also. We need different mindsets, we need different perceptions, then only we'll be able to reach to a conclusion or a solution. Like I said, that more of the focus is towards infectious diseases only, but when we know that it's not only the diseases which make the food harmful, there are a number of other things also. There can be any chemicals, there can be any toxins, there can be, like, antibiotics are also being used in producing the food. In the food producing animals, the antibiotics are being used, they are creating resistance. It is also making food unsafe. Everything is interconnected. So it's not only about the infections, it's we have to see each and every factor and address each and every factor. There may be disagreement about the exact definition of One Health, because as I said, we are from different streams, we are different people, we have different perceptions, so One Health can be different for different people. But if we have a uniform framework, That is very important. If we have a uniform framework for foodborne diseases, then at least there will be some uniformity, and we'll follow particular guidelines, and every professional will follow. And this is just a reference from King LJ, One Health and Food Safety, who has underlined the importance of this new framework. And this is actually, I would have said this in the starting only, but already the previous speakers have told that most of the zoonoses, they originate from the animals in the food production chain. So therefore, food becomes an important vehicle for many zoonotic pathogens, not only for simple non-communicable diseases, but zoonotic pathogens as well. And there, one of the major issue in food safety is that in the latest decades, there has been a lack of cross-sectoral. We don't have a dialogue with each other. Even if I talk about the medicos and the veterinarians, we don't have a common platform. It's not that we don't want to have a dialogue, but usually we don't get a common platform where we can decide about the strategy for zoonotic diseases. So we lack somewhere in the cross-sectoral collaboration, and we work in our own domains rather than working together. So this is a very important thing, that we come together and then we discuss and then we solve the problem. Different microbes are responsible for zoonotic diseases, and they can cause the diseases, foodborne diseases. So, and from animals, look, the foodborne illness can either be transmitted as an infection from, we can have two harmful effects. Either that food producing animal is affected from some zoonotic disease and we get that disease from that animal, or we get some kind of disease from the food product, which we are getting from that particular animal. And wildlife is important because otherwise it's not that, if we see in the past perspective, it was not that important because interaction was not there. But now there is a lot of close interaction. There's no gap between the residential area and the reserve or the national parks. Even if I tell you the example of the tiger reserve where I worked for 5 years, the road, the main highway was going through the core region of the tiger reserve. So when you see the situation is like this, because development is equally important, we cannot stop the developmental projects, but this is really unfortunate that even the core zone is having such disturbances, because otherwise the activities are allowed in the buffer zone, but they are not allowed in the core zone at all. But due to these developmental activities, sometimes the situation is which I have given the example. So the conflict in such cases is very significant, because, like for example, if I tell that in 2 years there were around 22 killings of humans by leopards in that one particular range where that highway was passing through the core region, and the same 2022 human injuries were there. So all these things are because we are moving into each other's domain, interacting a lot and transmitting diseases as well as having conflicts. This is all the same which I have already talked. So and another thing is that it's very the food system is very complex. A lot of steps are involved, a lot of like medical factors, then agriculture, then environmental, all these systems are involved in the production of food and till it reaches us for eating. So all this is a complex thing. We have to understand all this system, every step of the system, every stakeholder, every system involved, role of every system involved, and then we have to accordingly address. And greatest challenge is that we are not having a dialogue at regional or local level what to talk about national and global, because we need to have a global convergence. If there is some guideline at the global level, Then in the broad, if we see broadly, if we talk about planetary health or One Health at that platform, because food is now not from the local place. We have an access to the food which has been grown somewhere else in the any other part of the world. So global convergence is equally important. We have to broaden our vision. We have to have a dialogue on national as well as international platforms also. As I said, research is also very important. And this slide talks about antimicrobial resistance, which I told you I talked just before this. So it is also important that we use the antibiotics judiciously. We don't, you know about the example of diclofenac, which led to the population decrease of the vultures. So you know that these kind of antibiotics are also, we have different harmful effects indirectly also, because if the vulture population is decreasing, scavengers population is decreasing. Otherwise they would eat the rotten carcasses also. But now if the vulture population is less, the scavengers would be less, and that food will be left over, and not humans but animals, that they can consume that food, and it can lead to foodborne illnesses. We use the antimicrobial agents in food producing animals or the crops, which provide potentially important risk factor for selection and dissemination of AMR and determinants from animals, food crops to humans via the consumption of food. We are using antibiotic in the foods or in the food animal, but ultimately it is being transferred to us through the food we are consuming. And we are also developing that resistance, which our food which we have acquired from the food which we have consumed. So we should know about this concept also. And the just three things about this AMR in food animals. It's serious because overuse of mass prophylaxis. What actually, you know, we somewhere we humans, because we think too much, we try to do too many things at once, and sometimes we forget the practical thing and we overdo the things. Mass prophylaxis are being done, deworming we do, and we think that every third or fourth month we should deworm the animals, but it's not really important. If you're doing the diagnosis, you are going for the fecal examination and they are not affected, they are not having that infection, then there's no need. I cannot impose it on anyone, but it's my personal opinion that first we should diagnose. If only that problem is there, then we should go for the deworming. Misuse of human critically important antibiotics like diclofenac was banned in veterinary use, but what people were doing, they were using diclofenac drugs which we have in market for humans. So even after being banned, diclofenac was being used. This thing is also very important, that whether we are following the rules or we are violating the rules. We don't understand the importance, then only we can do such kind of thing, that we don't understand why it is banned and what is the harmful effect. So thank you so much. I think I've taken a lot of time. Thank you so much for hearing, and I would be really happy if any one of you have any kind of questions.
Thank you so okay, thank you so much, Dr. Sharma.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sharma. Thank you so much for your nice presentation. Actually, you have mentioned in my opinion, two important notes. That One Health, it's not only about zoonotic diseases, it's about health equity and how we can approach through One Health, health equity for everybody, not only the human being, even for the animals and the environment. That's the first thing. And secondly, that lack of a platform to communicate within the sector, within the veterinary sector, That's also an important thing to discuss maybe in the near future. I don't know. So thank you so much, Dr. Sharma. You have concluded also the challenges that we are facing during combating antimicrobial resistance. I'd like to ask the audience if they have any questions to Dr. Sharma and ask her. Hello, is there any questions from the audience? Except that there's some comments for you, Dr. Sharma. Joseph, one of he had just mentioned that with a projected population group by 2030, 2050, how will this phenomenon affect food safety, knowing that less land will be available for growing food, either for animals or humans?
Yeah, actually, this is a very important point because we are not somewhere we are controlling the population of animals, even domestic animals, wild animals. If I talk not, in India, culling is not allowed, but still we are doing a tubectomy and vasectomy. All these kind of sterilization programs are going on for the animals. Then contraceptives are being used. But what about human population? Mainly, the problem is exploding human population. We are the people who are going inside their habitat, in the habitat of wildlife. So of course this is a problem because when we are not able to control the human population, then the demand of land and the demand of food will obviously increase. That is why all these results in changes in land uses, the forest land being converted to agricultural land, all these things happen. But some people are now like trying to turn from non-vegetarians to vegetarians. We are trying to find some alternative things for food, but I don't want to say anything which is not practically possible. I do admit that there is no sure short solution. Presently I cannot think of any sure short solution for this. Just that we can, whatever food is being produced, or rather I'll say overproduced for the population, increasing population, at least we can try to have a safe and hygienic food. We can try to control the steps of the whole food production chain, and at least we can try to avoid the things like AMR. Every perspective will not be able to cover. It's not feasible, but at least few things we can address. So this is all what I can say. I don't have a sure short solution for that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Aditi. And also there's a comment that from Dr. Simon that I think that he thinks that diclofenac is not considered for antimicrobial resistance, but yes, it's considered as an anti-inflammatory residues that goes decrease in the vulture uh, population. Yeah. So please, Dr. Aditi, if you
Yeah,
want to add anything.
it's not for AMR. Diclofenac example I gave for the antibiotics which have harmful effects. I didn't give that example under AMR category. It is that it was banned because vulture population was being affected. It's of course anti-inflammatory drug, diclofenac, but I don't know, like there might be some kind of confusion. I don't say that it causes AMR.
Yeah, but the point that the residues, the chemical residues of the veterinary pharmaceutical products they have an impact on the wild nature also, not only in the domestic nature or only on the human, because the human they think only they are the center of the world and we should think only about them, not about the environment or the animals. So
Yeah, of course, because
I guess
vulture population, the effect on that was not direct. That was because they were consuming the domestic animal carcasses. That is where the
Yes.
diclofenac was being transferred from the domestic food animals or the domestic animals to the vultures. Not directly it was being used with that the vultures were not being injected the diclofenac directly. So indirect effect would always be there. And of course, it's a very harmful effect. We need scavengers to clean the earth.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Aditi. We will share with the audience your email address and even the presentation if you wish.
Yeah, I have
Um,
no problem.
Yeah, thank you. So I hope that we had also mentioned our chat, pardon me, our WhatsApp group chat, if so we can share the presentation and the email address of the presenters. So thank you so much, Dr. Aditi, for your nice presentation. And now, yes. So, because I guess that now it's kind of late in most of the participants' countries. So, let's have a break for 2-3 minutes, and then we can resume our webinar for today. I hope that everybody till now they are enjoying that. So, uh, thank you so much. Thank you. Just 2-3 minutes break. Thank you.
This
For all of us,
conference will now be recorded.
due to the late in the time and also the take longer than we expected for the previous presentation. I suggest to reschedule this presentation because I have may take some couple of minutes that may become late than what we can organize for the time. I don't know if this suggest can work with you all, or we can continue as you like.
See, doctor, let's continue. So, because it's recorded, and a lot of people they are just asking about the recording. So I don't want you to miss the recording of the webinar. So most of them they also state in their countries, so they ask for the recording. And also we have a partnership with some initiatives that they ask for the recording more than attending the webinar. So we focus more on the recording. So I apologize. If you wish, we can
No problem.
reschedule it. But I don't want the others to miss today's webinar. That's it.
No problem. No problem, Dr. Wenda.
So let's start. And I'm gonna just make you the organizer. Okay, so you can share your screen. Please, if you face any technical issue, just let me know. And meanwhile, I'm gonna present Dr. Wasim Al Khatib.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, now we are back to our webinar. Dr. Wasim Al Khatib, he is a poultry business and technical consultant. He has graduated from the Jordan University of Science and Technology since 2004 from the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine. He had a great experience in the field, but the most prominent experience, let's say, or he used to be the regional poultry technical consultant for Elanco Animal Health United States, for Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, and Syria. And also he used to be the animal production manager for the dairy, poultry, and the quail in Astra Group, Astra Farms in Saudi Arabia, as well as I'm sorry, recently he is a livestock and poultry business consultant for Creative Solution Company in Jordan, Amman. So Dr. Wasim Al Khatib, please, the floor is yours. Uh, yes, you can start your
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Randa, and thank you for all to be here today. And I'm really, it's my pleasure to share with you my experience regarding the part of food safety in the poultry production part of the food safety. I'm really appreciate the effort that you are paying, Dr. Randa, and the Food Safety Commission to organize this meeting and sharing the experience between the participants and also from different parts of the world. Today, really, I would like to share with you my experience or my past experience in one of the most part of the food safety in poultry production related to salmonella control. As we know, salmonella control is very important part of the poultry production value chain. Just let me change the presentation because there's some technical issue. Is it coming, Dr. Randa?
Yes, it's clear. It's optimizing salmonella control project.
Yeah, the slide is changing as well.
No. You can just view the full screen.
Can I reshare again? Apologize about this issue.
Oh. Yes, it's clear right now. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very wonderful. Yeah. As we all know that salmonella is a very important part of the foodborne illness that contributing to the outbreak of of most of the diseases that contributing to the health of the consumers, for the final consumers of the meat produced through the value chain. Today I would like to share with you the most important part that are contributing to the successful intervention plan related to the salmonellosis control in poultry. Today, we all know that salmonellosis is not a local issue or a national issue. It's a global issue. It have a heavy burden. It put a heavy burden for all the producers all over the world to control this pathogen and to minimize its effect in the final product and to produce the most safe and successfully being intervention in the plant. Dr. Randa?
Yes, doctor.
Yeah. This is changing the slides because I have seen some technical issue related to the changing of the slides. I don't know. Can you share the slide?
It's introducing the bacterium.
Yeah. Very good. Salmonellosis, let's back to the salmonellosis. Salmonellosis in poultry, it is very complex and difficult diseases to be managed. The fact that due to the different reasons that related to this issue in poultry production, the first contribution factor related to the difficulty and the complexity in the managing of the diseases in poultry plant is the nature of poultry production process. We all know the production process of the production of poultry in general. It is produced in a vertical integration. In most of the producers here in our countries and also in our region, most of the poultry are being produced through an integration system that rely in an intensive and also in massive production. This massive production and intensive process of production put a heavy stress, a heavy and stressful condition that can correlate it to the minimizing the effect of sorry, Doctor,
Yes, please.
can I share
Yeah,
back?
we can see. Yeah, yeah, we can see your screen.
I have some technical issue. I don't know where, because the slide is not being changed. Because I talk about some slides and the slides coming back.
Okay, let me share my screen. Just a minute. Okay. Let us stop recording and
This conference will now be recorded.
turn off the camera.
Are you
Okay,
sharing the
can
presentation
you see
as
my
well?
screen? Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
No, Randa, we can't.
Right now you you see. Okay, that's okay. I guess now you can see it. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I'm
Put in PowerPoint mode.
Yes. Can you see? Yeah. Right now. Can you see my screen?
not
You
yet,
removed it.
Dr. Randa.
It was there before.
No or yes?
This
It was
conference
there.
will now be recorded.
Now can you see
Yeah,
my screen?
yes,
Yeah.
we can.
Yes,
I
it's
mean,
coming, Dr. Randa.
yeah. Can you see it right now?
Yes.
Yes, it's coming, Dr. Randa. Thank you so much.
Yes. You're welcome. Please, Aminu, can you take screenshots for the presentation?
Dr. Randa, just follow me in changing the slides, please.
Okay.
We are very sorry for this technical issue, guys, and let us back to the main topic. The main topic regarding the control of salmonella and as part of food safety control related to the safe consumption of meat in poultry. We all know that salmonella is a very important part of the threats that are contributing to most of the outbreak globally happen to the consumer, resulting from consumption of the meat contaminated with salmonellosis in poultry. The salmonellosis control, I just want to make a quick review of all of the slides, just to save the time and also to make our talk more efficient in utilizing the time. As we said before, the nature of poultry production process is very complex, and it's relying in the production and of massive and intensive system for producing the final product of meat. Intensive means that the birds that are being reared in the farm are within a very stressful condition, resulting in making or open the opportunity for all opportunistic bacteria or a threat that can be introducing through the production value chain in the final product that can be a very important threat to the consumer of the meat over the production. And this is the nature of poultry production process that have a major correlation or contribution to the safety of the food that are produced through the value chain. and also the inadequate management of the cold chain product. We know that that poultry meat is very perishable product that need to be preserved in a cold chain from farm to fork. It is very important, and we know that this cold chain can have some breakdowns during the chain from after being produced from the processing plant through the distributor and retailer, and also to the end when end of the product at the table of the consumer. This is a very important also contribution to the problem, adding a very complex, adding a complexity and difficulty in the management. Also, the nature of microorganism itself is very important as part of the complexity in the management. This part we will talk about it in details more because this microorganism is very important, very have a very important and have a very special nature, making it is very difficult to be monitored and also to be controlled over the production value chain. Poultry meat also handling and preparation practices. This is related to the consumer's behavior and also related how the consumer or the final user or the retailer that been using this meat in handling and the preparation prior to the cooking, which is very difficult, very different between part and part of the world. And also the restriction, as we have heard about the AMR banding, yeah, AMR banding, and also the restriction of the use of antimicrobial in the poultry production, making the processes very difficult to be managed due to the open spaces for the multiplication and amplification of the related microorganism that could be can be infect the poultry or the bird during the primary production prior to the head to the processing plant. Next slide, please, Dr. Randa. Thank you. Introducing the bacterium, as we said, the bacterium is very complex and have a very special nature that making it difficult to be monitored and to be also controlled over the production value chain. Salmonella is related to the family of Enterobacteriaceae, which is a very big family, and have a subspecies of Salmonella enterica, species Salmonella enterica and subspecies enterica. This family have different serotype and different bacteria that related to this family, like E. coli and Enterobacteria. Those bacteria, as we know, it is related to many disease conditions for poultry, resulting in different economical and health impact for the bird itself and also for the consumer as well. It is rod shaped and motile as well. It is non-spore forming and glucose fermenting, facultative anaerobe, and the gram-negative bacteria. All of these features related to the bacterium itself that have a specific and have also different correlation to the complexity of the control during the production value chain. Next slide, please, Doctor. Salmonella control is frustrating. Why? As we said before, due to different reasons related to the production itself, the production process inside the vertical integration, and also the specification of the microorganism itself, and the specification. Those specifications related to the bacterium itself due to have a higher impact in making the control and also in putting and planning for the interventions during the growing plan, making it very difficult for the producers due to the widespread in the nature, and also due to the survival of this microorganism in the environment for a couple of months. Also, the another features related also to the and contributing to the complexity of this microorganism is the limited effectivity of the vaccine that being integrated or implemented in the prevention of the diseases in the primary production, especially in the breeder stage of the integration. Also, the birds can infect the bird itself when we are talking about the broiler and the breeder. It can also be infected with more than one serotype from both paratyphoid and typhoid or diseases. Also, we have a higher infection pressure correlated to the massive production and also correlated to the higher sources of infection that can be introduced to the bird while it's growing out in the primary production. The cross contamination from other animal as well. It is also being the source of infection from different animal living in the same environment around the farm where it's being produced or being reared. This making the process also more complex and more need more intervention to be implemented in the whole integration. Also, sometimes asymptomatic carriers, bird can be infected with different serotypes that can have no clinical signs appeared in the bird, appeared very healthy and no problem that can be seen in the bird, but the carrier cases that can be interfered with different intervention plan and also monitoring plan in the same integration and also in the market of the during the marketing and food hygiene. Next slide, please, Victor. The nature, this nature of the disease or the nature of this bacterium makes the processes very complicated, very complicated, and also need different intervention plan to be integrated within the whole process of the integration or the whole process of a production for poultry. This bacterium is grouped in different groups related to the Kaufman-White schemes. It's grouped in four groups or in subgroups that are related to the some criteria or serotyping of the bacterium itself. We have the typhoid and paratyphoid part of the salmonellosis. The first one, the paratyphoid, it does not have a specific host that can be infected in the bird. It can infect the bird without and with asymptomatic signs that being correlated with the infection. But when we are talking about the group, when we are introducing or when we are targeting the food safety, we are talking about the bacteria that can cause illness to the end user or the end consumer of the meat. We can say that from group B, we have Typhimurium, Salmonella typhimurium, and from group D, we have Salmonella enteritidis. Those two bacteria are the very high importance in the production process of in the broiler process for especially for both for meat and also eggs. We have recently seen that Salmonella infantis have also different impact on the human health that can cause human illness after the consumption of meat or poultry eggs that been infected with Salmonella infectis recently. And also we have different reports that talking about another type of bacteria that can another serotype from different groups that can cause food illness after the consumption of poultry products contaminated with those serotypes. Next slide, please, Victoria. Regarding the complexity of the microorganism, this microorganism or salmonella, during the pre-harvest source of contamination, the, the, the high number of source of infection that can be correlated to the or introducing the bacterium to the bird while it's grow out, making it very complex, because we have to have a very powerful and very complex intervention plan need to be targeting every part of these sources during the grow out of the bird. We have when we are talking about the sources of infection during the grow out, we are talking about, for example, the natural reservoirs from the wild animals, from dogs and cats that can be introduced, that can contributing to the introducing of the bacterium to the birds during the grow. Also, the best rat and mice also is very important. The best from darkling beetle, for example, flies, and also the ticks and mice that can also introduce salmonella to poultry during the grow out. Housing also have a very important part in introducing and also in maintaining the presence or the existence of the microorganism in the building, because we all know that the poultry houses building from different type of building material. For example, the cracks in the floor, in the walls, and also in other equipment that's been implemented inside the housing, also can offer a better environment for multiplication and also for the existence and maintaining the existence of this microorganism to be introduced for the successive cycles of broiler or breeder being reared inside in these houses. Also, the people playing a very important role in introducing the salmonella to the bear while they grow out during from the worker inside the farm itself, and also from the visitor that being accessed to the area where the birds are reared. We have also seen that the exchanging of the farm equipment and the transportation between farm to farm, and also from between the site and site in the same integration or between different integration can play a major role in transferring the infection and also the microorganism between all of these production sites. The major source that we have seen during the production process, the contaminated feed and water. Contaminated feed and water have a very important part of transferring and introducing the continuously and inconsistent way introducing the bacterium to the birds in different stages. We are talking very importantly here in the stage of breeders. Breeders, it is the main source of contamination is the feed that make different sources of infection and different sources for introducing the bacterium to the breeder, and also help in transferring as the transovarian to their progeny, to the hatching eggs, and also to the broiler grow out through the vertical transmission. Therefore, here we are talking about the different sources of infection. We have to put a very comprehensive intervention plan to target all of these sources and to maintain the elimination, and also to maintain the health of the birds away from having introduction to this microorganism. Next slide, please, Doctor. In post-harvest, In the processing plant, we have seen, or there is different sources of contamination during the processing plant, because the processing plant receive a very high volume of live birds, and it's being processed every day from different sources, from different locations, and in the same integration. And sometimes from different integration, they have exchanged the live bird between each other, and this can help and aiding in adding more complexity to control salmonellosis in the poultry value chain. The contamination inside the processing plant can be as a source of contaminated processing equipment, and also as the positive flux being projected to processing plant to play also a very important source of infection that can add more contamination and more complexity to maintain and also to control salmonellosis inside the processing plant. The different source also for salmonella sources of infection inside the processing plant, the use of contaminated harvesting equipment, as we said, that have also play a major role in transferring the infection between site and site, and also between different location inside the integration, and also inside different integration in the same country or the same region. Cross contamination of the carcasses. This can happen during the processing due to the fact that most of the producer in our region that use a pre-chiller, a water chiller, and also pre-chiller and disposer that can introduce the salmonella microorganism to the carcasses while it's being processed inside the processing plant, due to the contact through the water itself, and also through the direct contact between carcasses and carcasses while processing. The processing water also is very important to be considered in the intervention plan, because the industrial use of water for processing is and many times that they are using the well water or a commercial source of water that need to be addressed as well in the hygiene, and also in assuring the quality of water that need to be need to be used in the processing of poultry prior to the final product. Aerosol or the air inside the processing plant also play a major role in transferring the microorganisms, introducing and also transferring the microorganism between the different parts of the processing plant, while during the duty time and also during the rest time of the processing plant. The hand of the personnel that are responsible for different tasks during the processing can also contributing with very high correlation with the increase the contamination of the carcasses in the same batch every day of the production. Next slide, please, Doctor. Salmonella control need to be considered when we are looking to implement, or when we are planning to put an intervention strategies to control salmonella in both the breeder and the broiler. We have to consider different risk factors that need to be addressed and need to be also considered in the intervention plan, like the absence of cleaning and disinfection, the presence of visitors, or the visiting activity to the farm site or to the farm locations where the live birds are present, the multi-age management system that are very important also in maintaining the infection inside or within the production, especially when we are talking about the breeder production. The cage housing system also, it can be considered as one of the key risk factors that correlated with the contamination of hatching eggs, and also in the of table eggs that being produced through cage system. The presence of previous salmonella infection in the same site. This is also have a very high relative to the presence of the or the existence of salmonella within the farm or within the farm site or the location where the successive cycles of for broiler or breeders being produced. Manure contamination is very important as well. When the decomposition or the discarding of the manure process have some uh, some 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 part of making of maintaining some part of the previous manure in the site in the farm site can also play a major role and have a higher risk on maintaining the infection inside the farm. The presence of rodents and other pests inside the farm and also have risk factors that have to be considered when we are evaluating and also planning for different strategies of addressing the salmonella infection inside the farm. Induced molting also, this is a stressful condition that can also make an immunosuppression for the type of immunosuppression for the bird can also reduce the effectiveness of immune system to deal and also to maintain the health of the bird, and can also be in compromise that lead to the amplification and also increasing the risk of having salmonella inside the production process. Rearing polyethylene floor also is very important because the direct contact with the manure under litter, the contaminated litter that can also maintaining the cycle and the cycle of infection and reinfection inside the houses or inside the farm. Larger flock sizes more than 30,000 inside the houses. This lead to higher stocking density, especially at the marketing age, leading to high amplification and also high number of the microorganism being introduced to the bird, leading to higher infection rates inside the processing plant. Middle and late phase of production, we are talking here about the breeder itself, the breeder during production. This have an impact on as a stressful condition during the high production phase, leading to making the infections very easy during the middle and late phase of production for breeders and also for layers. Egg production more than 90%, as we said before, this is very stressful for the bird and it's open the door for infection and making the process very complex to maintain the health and maintain the negativity of the flux during this stage of the breeder. Best will best also have access to the feed during while the feed is present in the farm or inside the feed mill. This is very important as part of contamination for the feed prior to the delivery to the farm site and also to a farm site, whether it's a breeder or a broiler. Next slide, please, Victor. So we are talking about intervention plan due to the nature of the processing of the production process and also to the nature of the microorganism itself and the different source of infection. We have to have to implement a strategy or intervention plan that have different have a key feature for a successful intervention plan. The intervention plan to be successful that have to be holistic. Holistic, when we say holistic, that we have to consider addressing all sorts of infections inside the production process. It has to be also unconstrained. Unconstrained means it needs to be open to invest in every part of the production plan to address every source of infection, and also to maintain the negativity or to maintain the least contamination in the final product. It has to be also sustainable. It had to be all the time and also all season being maintained in the production plan, and also it had to be measurable. Here is very important. The intervention plan need to be measurable. We have to have a measure that need to be monitored during the intervention, during the application of the intervention plan, to be also sure that we are going and the process of intervention is being in the right way. These couple of features had to be considered when we are planning for a successful intervention plan to target food safety related to salmonella in poultry production system. Next slide, Doctor, please. Salmonella intervention plan, as we said before, we have more than 60% of broilers meat are being produced through vertical integration. I can say here in our country, in the Middle East, and in our region and in our country here, more than 70% of broilers being produced by vertical integration, from breeder to hatchery and to the grow out and to processing and plant. This means that when we are focusing as an international or national improvement plan for poultry, we have to focus on the key integrators that are responsible for the production of poultry meat in each country. We have different intervention in each stages, for in the breeder and also in hatchery and in the grow out. All of these live part or the primary production part have a very important part, which is the biosecurity. We have to focus on biosecurity. Biosecurity means that we need to prevent the introduction of the microorganism to live bird by an application of all processes and all interventions that can be done at the primary production to prevent the introduction and to minimize the introduction of the microorganism to the live bird prior to the objection or to heading to the processing plant. In a breeder also we can here talk about maintaining the zero level. When we are targeting have a zero salmonella in the final product, or the least frequency of detection salmonella in the final product, we have to have zero chicks from breeder and also zero breeder from grandparent. This is a very important part of the intervention, or very important part to have a zero status of salmonella in when we are designing the intervention plan for controlling salmonella in poultry value chain. Nowadays, the different strategies being implemented in a breeder and also in a broiler to control the salmonella. That all this focusing in the quality of feed that being used and the quality of water, which is the most important part in addition to biosecurity, in maintaining the negativity and maintaining the health of intestinal integrity that will affect the health and wellness of the bird to defend the microorganism during the grow out, whenever it's being introduced or whenever it's being inherited from the vertically from the breeder. This is very important, and it can be achievable in maintaining the zero or the negativity of the flux for salmonella, but we have to have or we have to focus mainly on the biosecurity and also in maintaining higher quality feed and water to prevent the fecal oral infection and reinfection inside during the primary production. Although we have different other strategies that been implemented through different investment in different stages in the hatchery and also in the grow out, but most of them that they have different level of addressing the infection or the source of infection. But we are mainly here talking about the highest contributing to the infection in the final product related to the introduction from feed and water, mainly related to the breeder and also in the grow out. Next slide, please, Doctor. Targeting gut and the nutritional health, as we said before, because the salmonella infesting the gastrointestinal tract of the bird, therefore, when we are designing the intervention plan, we have to focus on the gut and the nutritional health for different reasons. Basically, to aid in the immunity of the bird to defend the microorganism, and also to have less immunosuppression opportunity that can lead to different disease status of the bird. Nutritional health also to provide the needed nutritional profile to maintain the health of the bird and also to maintain the ability to defend the microorganism, whether it is from salmonella or other different threats related can affect the bird health and also the performance of the bird. Different products that been used or different solutions that been used in the feed for broiler and breeder, from essential oil, phytogenic, antibiotics, emulsifier, mycotoxin binder, prebiotic, probiotic. All of these products or these solutions that have a specific function that can add more, let's say, more profitability in adding the value for the health and the wellness of the bird itself, and also in the performance of the bird, leading finally to a stronger bird that can defend and also to reduce the presence or the existence of salmonella within the feed that being delivered to the farm, whether it's breeder or breeder. Next slide, please, Doctor. When we're talking about Salmonella 0 and poultry, it is very complex and it is not easy to have or to maintain Salmonella 0 and poultry. But when we are looking or when we are planning to have a zero level, I can say from my experience that it can be achievable through the integration of a specific tool for collecting the data, analyzing the data, and also analyzing and putting the corresponding action for the positivity detection within the production process from the breeder through the processing plant and the final product. Next slide, please, Doctor. I want to explain something here. The three basic strategies for intervention plan when we are targeting the zero level or the zero tolerance of salmonella in the production value chain, we have to have or we have to consider these three basic strategies for intervention plan. We have to put an intervention plan relying on the prevention and also prevention, the introduction of the microorganism to the live bird during the grow out, whether it's in the breeder or hatchery or in the broiler. Also, we have to implement a monitoring for the critical control points in the whole process from the breeder through the processing plant, and also we have to put a corresponding action related to every control point to be able to maintain the zero level, and also to maintain the action being integrated in the operation of the processing, integration of the operation of production in the same producer, at the same producer. These three key basic strategies are very important, and they can work whenever we have an implemented plan and integrated inside the production process, using the tools that can be able and that can be adopted in the production process. We are talking about using the, the, the Lean Six Sigma methodology to be to be used and utilized in addressing the different parts of the intervention plan, as we have past experience in utilizing these tools in maintaining and also in having the applicable and also predictable process of salmonella control in the poultry value chain or poultry production chain. Next slide, please, Doctor. When we are talking about prevention, we have to consider every hygienic measurement to prevent the introduction of salmonella within the whole production chain by considering three very important or very high important things. We have to consider having a salmonella-free or chicken. We are talking about the breeders that have to become from free grandparents, and when we are talking about broilers, we have to ensure that their all chicks come from free breeder and also hatchery with free day old. This is very important part of the intervention plan when we are thinking about having a zero tolerance of salmonella in the production value chain. Salmonella-free environment, this is very important here, in the importance of applying biosecurity in different categories and in different strategies need to maintain the free environment of salmonella to have a free or zero salmonella in the total production plan. Provide feed and water free from salmonella. As we said before, feed and water is very important and very important source in introducing salmonella to the whole production, which need to be considered in the prevention plan of salmonella in the whole production. Next slide, please. Controlling also monitoring the control points. We have to consider implementing a constant monitoring of different points within the vertical integration, from breeder farm to the hatchery and broiler farm to the processing plant and feed mill as well. Those all stages of a production within the integration is very important. Every part have a critical control point need to be addressed and need to have implementing a direct, let's say, a direct targeting plan for every single point to be able to monitor and also to have a corresponding action for every series. Take action when we have, whenever we have a positive, let's say, a positive sample or a positive results in salmonella control or salmonella control strategies in different stages, and whether it's in the breeder or feed mill or in the broiler, we have to have a corresponding action that can correlate it to the CCP that's been detected, and it has to be also implemented within the integrators after being adopted from the management and the team of production as well. This is very important in controlling the final product or having key strategies to maintain the intervention plan with the optimistic level can lead to safer food production. Next slide, please, Doctor. To be able to have this this methodology or this intervention plan, we can rely in a very powerful methodology that's been implemented in different parts of manufacturing and in the manufacturing industry. And it can be also utilized in the food sector by implementing all the tools being adopted by Lean Six Sigma or the principle of Lean Six Sigma in food safety. The Lean Six Sigma it is a type or a methodology that use different tools being implemented in the process, resulting in the continuous improvement of every process that have different factors in the input and also that have an output. Using Lean Six Sigma here, it's not complicated as much as you expect. It is very simple, and it can be also practical, and it can be utilized in the production and also when addressing the food safety by addressing and defining the process of that or the target that we need to have to be addressed through the define phase. After the define phase, we collect all the data and having all the results of salmonellosis from different stages. We have also we can here design the measurements for the testing plan, let's say the sampling plan through the integration. That way we can collect the samples and analyze them in the laboratory and have the result at the final stage for the final analyzing. Through this analyzing, we can addressing different the different sources of infection during the process, the whole integration. Through the analyzing, we can address the source of infection and have also we can take the action and make the corresponding action to target these sources and have an implemented action plan that can be practical and can be very useful in addressing the source of infection and also maintaining the least infection of salmonella within the processing or within the value chain of production. Next slide, please, Doctor. As we have implementing the Lean Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma can connect all the concepts of Lean Six Sigma to achieve an effective and consistent salmonella intervention plan through the continuous improvement. This means that when we have decided or we have take the decision to implement Lean Six Sigma in addressing food safety, it can be an integrated methodology through the whole production for a continuous improvement. Through it, we can address different performance related problem whether it's related to the food safety or whether it's related to the performance of the bird or the flock that's been reared. It is a very powerful tool that can be implemented, and we can, through it, we can address different problem related to the waste to the waste or to the final quality of the final product when we have implemented in the production process. Next slide, please, Doctor. When we implement Lean Six Sigma approach in salmonella control, we have different benefits. It can provide a framework for integrating salmonella control into the operation. And also we have salmonella control in chain of process can be measured, analyzed, and controlled and improved as well. Also, we can achieve a sustainable salmonella control and create an innovative solution that not only use meet but exceed the organizational business expectation because when we are addressing salmonella, for example, addressing salmonella in the whole process, through it we can address the immunity of the birds, we can address the safety of the final product, we can address also the waste and also the improvement in the final and the quality of the process itself, and also in the final product of the whole chain. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, guys, for your attention, and we are very sorry for the technical issues related to the presentation. And if you have any question, I will be very happy to answer related to the salmonella control.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sam, for your nice presentation. Actually, you have discussed deeply the safety and the security level during processing poultry from A to Z, let's say, and also, because I'm tired, I can discuss too much. But actually also we have a special request from our initiative, the Green Globe. Check it. Yes, they have requested to repeat this presentation with them. It's one of our partners, and so I hope that you would accept our request. But the platform is not going to be GoToMeet, as they were trying to attend the meeting today, but they couldn't because of GoToMeet platform. They couldn't. It was they faced some issues. So we will send to you and to Dr. Abdel Fattah Muhammad one more time a special invitation to repeat this nice presentation, because it's actually professional, and it's not within our level, and it's need more advanced level. And I'm not experienced at all. I've heard new things about salmonella, and that was awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Wissam. So let's check the chat box if there's any special questions for you. Thank you, Doctor. Yes, everybody is thanking you for your nice presentation. So if there's any question to Dr. Wasim, I don't know why I call you every time Wissam. For Dr. Wasim,
No problem.
please.
No problem. No problem.
I'm sorry. It's totally my fault. Just having the webinars that much too in that time. So I apologize for that. And so and we will watch your webinar one more time. So if there's any questions to Dr. Wasim Al Khatib, please, I'm gonna share with you his email address, and even now you can just unmute yourself and ask him directly. The floor is for the audience right now. Thank you.
The question in the chat.
And
The chat.
Yeah, please. Please go ahead.
I'm saying there's a question in the chat box. There is a question in the
Yeah,
chat box.
yeah. So is okay. It's enlightening. What can you say about no antibiotics ever approach in Europe?
In Europe, yes, thank you, Amino, for this question. It's very important, really. As recently, the concept of AMR, or reducing the antibiotic use in the poultry, is very important. This is related to the concern for the final consumer of the meat, issues related to the resistance of the antibiotic, or the resistant strain of Salmonella. It is very high importance really in Europe, and also globally. It's been adopted in different parts of the world for the AMR, or AGB-free product. This put a high burden for the producer to maintain the productivity, and also to maintain the performance of broilers or the birds while not using or applying antimicrobials. This is very important to control Clostridium perfringens, and also for coccidiosis in poultry. This concept is very important. We have to consider the safety of the final product for the consumer, while maintaining also maintaining the health of the bird through the applying of different alternatives for aging, alternative for this antimicrobials, because these antimicrobials are addressing Clostridium perfringens and also coccidiosis. We have different alternatives that can be implemented in the production, and also it have an have a different effectivity in also maintaining and replacing the AMR. It is very high communication, and it also have successful stories that can be also learned from Europe and different parts of the world. The applying of these alternatives also can replace the antimicrobial successfully, and maintaining the health of the bird, and also maintaining and or ensuring a safer product for consumption, related when we are talking about the safety of the meat from the part of resistance, or the residue of antimicrobial in the final product. It is very important, but the consumption, the food consumption, the safe food consumption is very important. Yes. Mr. Randa, we are not hearing you.
Well,
Thank you,
can you hear me, Dr. Wasim?
Mr. Randa, we are not hearing you.
Okay, I think you are muted, Randa.
Yeah.
Hello, Dr. Wasim, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, Dr. Dr. Fatah, I'm hearing you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for presenting this important topic. Actually, Salmonella is not pure zoonotic disease. As you have said, it is a complex disease that can infect human beings as well as animals, and such diseases we call them cyclozoonosis, because we can't say it is pure zoonosis, or we don't know whether it comes from human beings or animals. I actually liked the way you presented the explanation and everything. Thank you very much. Actually, I don't have a question, but just a suggestion. Thank you very much for your nice presentation.
Thank you so much. waiting for Dr. Randa to back again to leading the presentation. But I think we have
Hi, Randa. All
This
right.
conference
So
will
I
now be
think
recorded.
Randa is having maybe some technicalities or something.